hello and welcome to today's session of the Natural Birth Summit. Today we're going to be talking about preparing for natural birth. And today we have Christine Taylor, who is a certified nurse midwife and Chicago native, now living in Atlanta, Georgia for the last 8 years. And Christine did her training and worked in a hospital in Chicago and moved to a home birth natural midwifery service, which she helped establish in 2014. Christine has a bachelor's in nursing, and she also has a master's degree in science and midwifery. Christine says that she knew from a young age her career would involve caring for expecting mothers and babies. And her passion caring for women and her highly intuitive care for natural labouring and birth processes really stand out. Christine lives in Georgia with a husband and children and a variety of animals, I think, including goats. Christine, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Al.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, so we will come back to the fact that you worked in a hospital setting but now moved to home birth. I think that's going to be part of the discussion, but it's just worth noting that right here. Before we dive into the topic, I wanted to say that we're recording this session on International Women's Day.
Yeah.
And International Women's Day is it's a big thing around where I live, and I think it is where you are as well. Yeah. And it's quite appropriate to me that we are celebrating women, and we're also talking about the birth event and the birth process in which the incredible power of women is revealed to anyone fortunate enough to be present. So I hope that there are fathers and family members out there watching and planning to be involved, because that's an incredible privilege. Yeah. And so we'll get started and talk about, you've started from a position of being interested in having a natural birth. Then what we're going to be discussing is how to prepare for that. Mm-hmm. So why don't you get us started, Christine, by talking about why do you need to prepare if you want a natural birth?
Yeah, I think that preparing for a natural birth is very important, because your whole body will be part of the process, from your mental state and your emotional state to your physical health, right? So it's all intertwined, holistically, So preparing your body so that you're just aligned in every way that you possibly can be is going to be a huge step in preparing for your natural birth, because natural birth forces you to tap into yourself, your whole self. There's no part of you that will not be a part of the process. The natural laboring process and birth process, like all of you will be, your entire being will be a part of the process. So making sure that you're nurturing every part of you is very important. Like, that's the first step, is just realizing what it is you want to do, why you want to do those things, and start tackling and tapping into ways to get yourself prepared for the journey.
And I guess that part of that is unpicking a little bit the interest in natural birth and understanding why you wanted to do that and what's important to you, and that guides the preparation and the information you try to gain to make informed choices. Is that a good analysis of that?
Definitely, and it's important to start there, because you can become easily overwhelmed with information. That is a thing, information overwhelm, and just
right.
Stimulation of trying to find answers for everything. So really just digging into why you want to do it and letting that guide you, as you said, to understand decisions you'll be having to make and how to prepare for certain things throughout the process. That's important. Like, what's important to you is priority. over trying to understand and know every single thing about the process.
That's a really interesting point about knowing it, the phrase knowing everything, because, there's this is a process in which you can't know everything. You
Correct.
can't know everything that might happen, and yet you're aiming for something special and magical. So how does a mother thinking through these things, how does she balance this desire for something beautiful and this knowing that and accepting that things don't, or you don't always know what will happen, and the unexpected can sometimes happen?
Yes, I think that is a very important discussion with my moms I take care of, especially who plan for home birth with us at Birth by Grace. Um, there's no possible way to know every single answer to what's to come. We can plan for something, but we don't know. There's a huge area of unknown, and we have to find a way to be able to cope with changes that happen throughout the journey, and
Right.
have plan A and plan B and possibly plan C. But just allowing yourself to have some grace, giving yourself grace, especially when you've never really experienced this before. So having a vision is beautiful and great, and having a plan is also. But just understanding that realistically, there are going to be things happening along the way that you didn't plan for, but having the coping skills to really get through that change or bump in the road or hiccup, if you will, and move forward and past it without it affecting you too deeply or too negatively.
And if just if you're not ready for that unexpected event, for things to happen that throw you off course a little bit, if you're not ready for that, then typically what is the things that can happen next? What happens when you haven't engaged, you haven't thought about it, you haven't had the conversations with your provider that help you prepare for that, then what can happen?
I think what can happen is a sense of just disappointment and letdown, and sadness, and so just having unrealistic expectations and not kind of navigating those feelings and thoughts, and those things can kind of set you up for to be in a dark place, I think, especially if you have the communication around those situations, and the people that talk you through it and with you, so that things can be put into a better perspective for you when changes happen like that. So, it's hard to have all the conversations about good and bad stuff, but it's very necessary because that's the reality that we have to move forward in.
Yes, yeah, I get that. And so, what's going to help a mother prepare or to be available and feel confident to have those kind of conversations with the people around them, whether it's a provider or their partner, birth partner, or family members? What's going to help them?
I think the first step is making sure that your team that you've chosen is the right team for you. A team that's really going to encourage and motivate you to reach the goals that you're trying to reach, during this time, but also keep you at a balanced level of reality, if you will. I think we can get caught up in images and documentaries and videos and social media. That's a whole different thing, right? That can kind of make things feel, I don't know. We don't
It's
see
pressure,
the whole,
doesn't it?
Yeah, it's pressure. It's pressure.
Yeah.
We don't see the whole picture behind the picture. Okay.
Yeah.
And so just understanding that we can't take everything in to make it a personal experience. But the first step, I think, is making sure you're lined up with the correct team for you that you've chosen so that you can be open and they'll be open flow of communication when we talk about options and goals and things like that in a realistic perspective.
Right. Okay. So, the birth team, then what's the chicken and the egg with the birth team and the place of birth? How do you approach that?
Mm. I think they're pretty much one and the same, only because, we know that if you want a natural birth and you want, let's say, a home birth, I mean, that's going to take a little more digging on your end and research, to find the right providers that work in that particular birth setting that you're looking for, which we know are not all, they're few and far between when you think of, the hospital system and the medicalized system of birth.
Right.
Alternative options are not as available in every area for all moms. So it's very, I think it's much more challenging to find providers that aren't, inside of the medical model of care.
Right.
So yeah, it does take a lot more digging and reading and searching, unfortunately.
Okay. And what do you think? What would you say to, having you've worked in both hospital and home settings? What would you say to a woman considering hospital versus home who wants to try to achieve a natural birth? How would you guide them? What advice would you give them?
I could say that opting for a natural birth doesn't necessarily mean home birth. It could mean a
Right.
birth center. You can achieve what you want to achieve in any setting, I believe. Um, However, the accommodations in each setting are pretty different, right? So we know that natural birth in a home setting is going to be a lot more hands off, and you'll have lots more freedom versus natural birth in a hospital setting, or I'm going to say unmedicated birth in a hospital setting.
Right.
Will look a little different and would require a lot more uh what do we call it, like just conversations, as far as trying to make sure you're going to get the type of birth that you want in a hospital setting, because you have so many other
Yes.
systems to work through.
Yes. Yeah. It may not be the same alignment with your plans as
Exactly.
you. Right.
So there's going to be a lot more pushback and a lot more restrictions when we're talking about, having a different type of a different type of a birth in a medicalized system. But I think that
Got
that's
it.
a conversation because, home birth and birth centers, they're not all available everywhere. So, how do I achieve this type of birth if the hospital is the only place that I have as an option?
Yeah. I mean, it is entirely possible to have a birth in hospital and to be really satisfied and
Yeah.
have a great experience, isn't it? But what I think what you're saying is it's you have to be more actively trying to get that, and you have to work harder to get it because it's not the normal necessarily the normal way that a hospital would approach it. Whereas if you are choosing with a home birth provider, home birth midwife, then that alignment is already there. There's no need to work at that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. So would you say in terms of uh, thinking about really expanding on, I think we could call it mindset, couldn't we, about birth? What else would you like to say about that in preparation?
I think mindset, if you've already decided that, you want to aim for a natural birthing process, I mean, that's pretty badass, if I can just say that in itself. Because you're already deciding that you want this process to be a particular way and not the way, of the masses, right? So you're
Right.
already taking a stand in, your healthcare. I want this, and this is what I want. So using that same energy to put into how you're going to achieve it, which is going to be, going into doing your research, reading, looking for people, talking to like-minded people, getting the information that you need to make this happen for yourself. Mindset is huge because that is what labor is, mind over matter. Okay. So you have to make sure that you are, moving in a positive light, a very informed light, and pretty much not letting anyone like penetrate the peace that you have, over yourself when you have decided that you want to birth a specific way.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So you're talking about really taking ownership. It's your birth, it's your life, it's your child's life.
Yes.
And you're also, I think, that talking about that protective space, and that I imagine that could be hard to protect if you go and have a conversation about going to a hospital, and they might be talking about all the risks and all the, then how do you keep the protective space in that situation? That must be hard.
It is hard. It's very difficult because it's kind of you against the world, and, if you're not with a provider that is, helping you or open to your plan, it can be very difficult. So you have to just kind of boss up and like not, you can take the information for what it's worth, because it's valid information maybe. Okay. But you can't let it infiltrate you and get into your subconscious and make you feel like you're doubting yourself, because as a woman and as a mother, you are making the best decisions that you're making for yourself and your baby and your body. Okay. So that part is where you need to just remain anchored in that confidence and knowing that you're making the right decisions for you.
And I can imagine that really getting the people around you to buy into that is really big. It's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes it's difficult because family members, they may not understand your choices and decisions. And so even the people closest to you is a challenge to just kind of, remain on course for what you're wanting to do, So it's not easy. That part of it is not easy. And then you have to walk into labor, with a fully aligned mind, body, and spirit. So it's it's difficult. Yeah.
I imagine that, many people will have they've got two things that make it perhaps a little bit harder. One is they've got society's images around birth, and 95% of the images you see coming out of the screen about birth in sort of TV shows, etc., they're traumatic emergencies, aren't they? That's one issue. The other one is there may well be family members of the same generation or previous generations who've had particular birth experiences that are quite defining for them, and they bring those to the conversation, to the table, and that can be another challenge.
Absolutely. You're always, and that's something I don't think we can get away from or run away from. I mean, family is going to share family stories, and I think if you're in a grocery store, the subject of birth, you can bring two strangers together to talk about. I mean,
yes.
A pregnant mom can be shopping for broccoli or something, and someone will come up, "Oh, you're so cute, and I had my baby this way and that way," and it's so hilarious to me, but also beautiful at the same time that birth brings people together.
Right.
But when you are trying to do something different, that's very different from what your family knows and your friend knows and your spouse may know, it can be very challenging. So it's finding your peace in all of that as well is you have to work hard for it and towards that.
Right. And in your experience, do mums find it helpful to do particular programs or courses around, grounding and centering and For example, hypnobirthing is a well-known one. Is that something that you think helps?
I do. There are lots of tools that that moms use, and a lot of times they come to me already knowing what works for them. But we are always sharing resources like hypnobirthing and tools as far as meditations and affirmations, using affirmations throughout pregnancy and labor and birth, and their doulas may even have a lot of resources as well for them to get in their mind space and protect that mindset as well as they prepare for their natural birth.
Yeah, I think that in one of our other sessions, one of the speakers said that having meditation or hypnobirthing or something that helps you have a kind of routine or a habit to get back to your kind of grounded self, so that you don't feel out of control when things change. That's really quite an important thing.
It is. It is. And then, we try to tap into what they're already doing that they can continue doing or add on to that, because they may already be in a routine of some sort of self-care grounding activity that they may not even be aware of.
Right.
That's great. You can use that to prepare for this labor, and birth, and so we try to just meet people where they're at as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Moving on then, from the mindset and the mental preparation to the preparation in terms of one's physical health, your body. What would you guide mums to about that?
We have lots of conversations around good nutrition and having a healthy and fit like pregnancy. Whatever you're eating and putting into your body is going to show up either positively or negatively in your body, right, during pregnancy, in the form of high blood pressure or excessive weight gain or swelling or anything abnormal, right?
Right.
And we know that labor is a marathon. So being conditioned and conditioning your body and mind for this marathon of labor that's ahead of you is also important too. Because when we're opting for a natural birth, that means that's a very active, physically active time. And
Right.
you want to be ready for that and have built up your endurance for everything you're going to be doing in your labor, which we know movement is what helps facilitate birth. So there's
Right.
lots of movement when you're opting for a natural birth, So our moms are coached heavily on good nutrition and physical activity during their pregnancy.
And that's keeping active in labor when you're many hours into it and it's extraordinarily hard, harder than you expected. That's a challenge, isn't it?
It is. It is a challenge, but there's different and when we say active labor and everything, I mean, we are including rest in the middle of all that. So there's just this dance and flow of activity and rest, activity and sleep, activity and, sitting and activity. And there's different types of activity, not necessarily just like running down the street, but, different positions you'll be in labor, so that it works. It works and it's achievable. Especially, even when moms are tired and at the end of, the process, when they feel like, oh, this is it. I don't want to do this anymore. And the baby.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And I think the comparison to a marathon is really useful, isn't it? Because most people who know what a marathon is, if they were going to do one, they would train for it.
Absolutely.
There are some people who would just show up and I'll be fine, but there's not many of them, and it doesn't usually go that well for those people, right? So I think it's a useful analogy that can help people understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we don't know how long labor looks for anyone. It might be quick. It might not be. Most times it's not. But there's things that all the tools and things that we utilize in labor and moms are having natural and unmedicated labor. include a lot of physical activity, you know, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, fantastic. And we talked about what you eat, and is there anything you go in, say, in terms of going beyond a balanced diet with a lot of, fresh food? Is there anything else you specifically point people to?
Well, so diet is that can be a challenging topic as well because we know that some moms live in food deserts, you know. There's a lack of access to quality food in a lot of
Right.
places, right? So this is a real
Yeah.
issue that we have to sometimes work around, you know. And so just kind of working with moms where they're at and seeing, you know, little steps in how we can get them to eat better quality foods and less processed foods, right? So anything in plastic containers is a processed food. We don't want to do that, right?
Right.
Anything, sugar being the first ingredient, we may not want to do that.
Right.
So just breaking it down in the very basic concepts, I think is improvement for a lot of moms because, you know, eating habits are habits we've had forever, even culturally, you know. So it's really unrealistic to expect a mom to be eating clean, organic from day one when you know, that we know that that's a more expensive a budget that requires that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we know that if we're in a specific area in a different city or a rural area, we know that access to quality, you know, real whole foods is maybe a challenge, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we approach nutrition. You know, we just try to break it down for moms to just bring awareness to what they're doing and what habits they can change along the way.
I think that's a really important point that, with a lot of these things, it's kind of known, isn't it? It's not difficult to understand what is a good idea, but putting it into practice is not easy.
Correct.
And that can be in pregnancy, that can be about finances, but it can also be about time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people who are working through their pregnancy are probably increasing their workload in order to get things done before they go on leave, to have their baby. And so that squeezes the available time. They know that they need to think about physical activity, but it's tough to do that when everything is getting more intense.
Yes, women are living real lives. Their lives are real, okay? They may have multiple children at home. They may be the only provider in the home, you know? So this is where we just meet moms where they're at and try to encourage and motivate them to do, you know, to make different choices as they can. Because life looks a lot different for different women. And that's part of, you know, working with women and encouraging them so that they don't feel like they don't have any other options or there is no room for improvement or they can't attain certain things and goals. We don't want them to feel defeated, and we actually don't want them to be, you know, feeling like overwhelmed at our ideas that are so great and wonderful, right? Because they can't apply to their lives, you know? So that's not how we want to make women feel like defeated already, you know?
Yes, it's that idea of if I don't achieve perfection, then I failed. We need to banish that, don't we?
That is correct. That is correct.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. And in terms of then looping this back to something we were talking earlier about, location and provider, what would you steer people to think about? People who are themselves thinking about, what might happen and risks of needing to transfer for different reasons, or people who are getting a lot of questions, from people close to them about, well, don't you want to be in a hospital? Or, what would you say to those moms about how to think about that, how to make the best decision for them?
Yes. I think moms need to understand that regardless of the birth plan they have put in place, there are risks for every birth plan. All right. There's a risk for moms. There's a very high risk. We know this, right? There's a very high risk of things happening in the hospital setting. You know, that's
Yeah.
true. That's reality. There are risks in home birth. There are risks if you're birthing at a birth center. So there's no route that's going to guarantee that there's zero risk involved. That's not reality, right?
Right.
Um, so what we need to do is just keep getting information and keep getting lined up with the providers who are providing great care and compassionate care to women, respectful care, okay, honoring options and honoring decisions, okay, and making sure you're just lined up with the right team of people. I think that goes a very long way. And the fact that so that when things change, I like for my clients, when they choose home birth and they hire us to help them through their journey and things change and the plans change, I still want them to feel like they were supported and they were listened to and they were heard and they were
Yeah.
empowered and informed throughout the entire process. So it won't be a focus on, dang, I had to go to the hospital at the end. It would be a focus on, well, this was still great. I know I didn't get to do this, but I still felt special during my care. And that's the
Right.
goal that every woman, every pregnant mom, every expecting family should be reaching.
That's just absolutely brilliant. So all your preparation is focused on finding out what's important to you, assembling the team that supports you, is aligned with your objectives, in which you have trust and confidence. That seems the word trust is crucial, isn't it here? And that could be in a hospital setting, that could be in a home setting. Those things are less important than the support, the trust, and the knowledge and choices that you as an individual make. I think if I can reflect that back, you're saying that people who have done that, who have made informed choices, who have got a team around them that supports them, that whatever then happens, they feel satisfied, maybe the wrong word, but they do not feel disappointed. They feel they owned that journey and those choices,
Yeah.
and they are happy to have done that. I think I'm struggling
Because
for language there. I'm sure you could use better words.
yeah, basically it's the whole journey that counts. It's not just the birth. There's
Right,
a whole process that happens before the birth happens, and how you feel during that process matters most.
right. Okay. That's a very powerful message. Really, that's fantastic. Before we conclude, is there anything else that you would share with mums in terms of this preparation for birth? Is there a closing thing you'd like to add?
Give yourself some grace as you go through this process, especially if you've never done it before, or if you've done it before and you know the differences and the different things you might want to experience this time around. Surround yourselves with like minded people who understand why you're doing what you're doing. And be confident and stand strong and tall in your choices and the decisions you're making because that's what's best for you. You know what's best for you, and you stand on that and anchor yourself in that. And just be confident and positive and gentle with yourself.
The word gentle is a great one to finish on. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your extraordinary experiences with us and the mums who are watching, and hopefully some dads too.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, they need to know that they're a vital part of this team, don't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Christine, before we go, can you please help people um, who would like to know more about you and your practice? What are the steps they can take? How can they do that?
Yeah, so I own Birth by Grace Midwifery Services, and we offer midwifery care and home birth services to families here in Georgia. You can find us on our website, www.birthbygracemidwifery.com.
Okay.
Instagram, Birth by Grace on Instagram, Birth by Grace. And we're also on YouTube. We have some fun videos on YouTube, Midwife Christine Birth by Grace on YouTube. So that's how you can find us. And we support moms in home birth and hospital birth settings as well. So, and we also offer prenatal care as well for moms who do want to birth in the hospital setting. We offer prenatal care.
Right.
And support you in the hospital during your birth. So those are kind of our services that we have offered.
Okay, so lots of options there. Most of the social media channels are covered and directly with you. And yeah, that's fantastic. Well, really appreciate you coming on today. That's been a really good conversation. I think that it was very practical and realistic. And I think in a good sense, that was, and that's really what mums need to hear. They need to be prepared. They need to be led through some of those, the challenges and how to handle it. And I think that's been great today. So thank you so much. And we really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.